For me, one of the whole points of doing a talk is so that people can come to me instead of me having to go out there and find lots of people. Hi, I'm Becky, and today we're talking about overcoming the fear of public speaking. Oh, this is a big one. Public speaking makes so many people so terrified. Even though I'm gonna do this focusing on public speaking from the perspective of myself, an autistic person, and hopefully talk about things that are going to be relevant to other autistic people, I think everything I'm going to say probably applies to like 99% of people anyway. So public speaking is actually something I love, and I love as a topic. I actually do teach public speaking and communication, especially to entrepreneurs. And so it's something that I feel like I know something about from a theoretical perspective, but even more importantly, I feel like it's something I know about from an experiential perspective. And as an autistic person, I actually think public speaking has been one of my secret weapons. So despite all the challenges that might come with public speaking, what it enables me to do is to have more control over the energy, the narrative, the people I attract towards me in a room. I find it much easier to go and be myself if I'm public speaking, i.e. like on a stage or, you know, I have the mic, versus going into a room and doing networking and having to have individual conversations with lots of people. So I've really found that it's a tool that I can use to attract the right people towards me. So I've spent a lot of time kind of learning to public speak and figuring out what works for me, what doesn't work for me. And so hopefully I can help with some of these things. The reason I'm doing this as a topic today is that I actually found myself in a situation last week. I was public speaking. Was it the first time? It wasn't the first time public speaking because I've taught since having my autism diagnosis, but it was the first time being on a stage at a big event. And I actually did find that I was more autistic, whatever that might mean. As in, I was finding that there were certain patterns of behaviours leading up to this talk that made it more challenging than I think it might normally be. And so it made me stop and think about what I need to do and what other people can do to make it easier to do public speaking. So I'm going to take you through 6 steps that I think that can make it, doing a talk, much easier. And this might be like a presentation to your team, a presentation at uni, a presentation at an event. It might not be a presentation, it might be a panel. That's what I was doing last week, sitting on a panel. What I'm not going to focus on today is like specific content, like how you build content, how you deliver an amazing talk or anything like that. I'm just doing the steps that I go through in order to feel more confident and to reduce anxiety when I'm doing public speaking. The first step is communication with anyone who's involved with putting on this talk. And that communication is all about getting clear about what their objectives are and what your objectives are and where those two things align. It also allows you to understand better all the logistical things that are going to add additional worries. The sooner you can know all the details of this event, like where it is, how it's going to be set up, the kind of technology you can use, who else you're speaking with, if there's multiple people, who the audience is. The sooner you have all of those details, the timings of the sessions, if people need you there beforehand, all of that stuff, the sooner you know that, the sooner you can start doing your own planning. And for me, that's really important. I need to know that to do this talking, which is most likely going to involve some travel, quite often will involve some travel, quite often involves stepping out of my normal routine, I need time to get comfortable with that, and I need time to almost make a new routine for that day and to get that planned out. Now for me, the talk I just did it happened very quickly. I kind of agreed to do it, and there was only a week between agreeing to do it and the actual event itself. And because I'm quite practiced at public speaking, that in itself didn't feel like that big a deal to me. But suddenly I got very, very anxious, very stressed out, because I realized I just didn't have enough details, and I was kind of going via a middleman. And so cat hair all in my house. I was going via a middleman and or middle woman, and I hadn't got all the information that I needed to be comfortable. So I was getting really, really anxious, even though I was trying to prepare, and then realized I didn't have the information that I needed. So I went back and was like emailing, and obviously events people are busy, they don't always get back to you straight away, and I had to kind of send a couple of emails in order to get the information that I needed over a couple of days. So I felt like I was stewing and getting very, very anxious. So that communication, the sooner you can do it, like I said, the better. And I cannot even tell you, I was a different person the moment this person got back to me and said, yep, this is how things are going to happen. I'll introduce you to the moderators of the panels. I in fact was trying to drop out of one of the sessions because I just felt like I didn't have enough time to prepare, and they didn't want me to drop out, and actually getting them tell me that and tell me why they thought I would add value on that panel was actually really, really valuable, and made me feel much less nervous and meant I could focus my preparation. Step 2, you may have guessed already, I've said this word a few times, is about preparation. Preparation is so key when we're doing any kind of public speaking. It's probably where you will spend the bulk of your time, is on the preparation. That means different things depending on what type of talk it is, what the audience is, what you're trying to get out of it, all of these things. Obviously you invest your time in a way that is appropriate to what you're going to get out of doing this talk. The preparation phase involves lots of things for me. I do some research around the subject. I then like to be really divergent in my thinking. So that's what we might think of as like a brainstorm type activity, where you're getting all your ideas out there, collecting up ideas and trying to see if there's any patterns or shapes or kind of unique ways in which you can explore this particular subject. Then I, of course, cross out a lot of things, like what is out of scope. And then eventually kind of land at a structure. I really like to script things when I'm doing a presentation. It's not always possible that you're going to be able to deliver a script, but the scripting can be something that is really, really helpful for me to kind of get my ideas in order. And I have read elsewhere that this is good advice for autistic people, because we like to really kind of clarify our thoughts and get focused. That's how I would prepare in terms of content, and you want to keep thinking back to the audience's perspective when you're doing that. The other bit of the preparation that's important is preparing like how you are going to navigate the day. So preparing in terms of logistics, preparing in terms of what it is you are going to need to do to get comfortable in your environment. You can do things to prepare for the day. And then when you're in the day, a lot of it is about kind of preempting and preparing, but also about being able to manage during that day, manage kind of stressful situations if they come up. So for me, the day itself, I like to have my own routines, my own speaking routines, which involve kind of a meditation track or music. I really like to try and spend a lot of time on my own. But I also have to recognize that the day itself is going to be a day that is full of stimuli. So travel, and I'm very lucky that for me, travel is not something that makes me too stressed. I am socially overstimulated, but I don't actually get like anxious around lots of people that I don't know. I'm able to kind of cut them out and make my own little bubble. So put my earphones in, like listen to my music or listen to podcasts, and that really, really helps me. And then at the event, you may feel under a lot of pressure to go and network at the event. If I don't know people, I try not to do that much of that. I try to take that pressure away from myself. I more like to spend time with the people who are organizing the sessions, so that I can kind of really get to grips with what it is that is going on and how it's going to work, and so I can understand that. This is before I speak. So I do try to kind of find the quieter spaces and, like I said, use a meditation track and maybe go through my talk, but really try not to overthink it, because it's so easy to overthink, and I think that often is like what holds us back from being really, really good public speakers. When I say us, I mean neurodivergent and neurotypical people, all people. Like, if we get in our head too much, then that's going to stand in the way of giving a good talk. So I think, like I said, on the day, for me, it's about kind of having my routines that I'll create prior. And of course, recognizing that there may be things that stand in the way of those routines. And so trying to also have those kind of anxiety reducing measures at hand, like breathing, like taking sips of water, like going to the bathroom just to like find some quiet space and to settle down. Then you'll find yourself actually having to do the delivery of this talk. So in some ways, I always feel like this is the safest place for me in the world, is being on stage, which might be the weirdest sounding thing ever, I don't know. But I'll tell you why. It's actually very rare when you're on stage that people are going to like come up and, I don't know, like, you're very unlikely to get heckled, for example, unless you're doing comedy. Then that's probably a whole different story. But at the kind of events I speak at, it's finally a quiet space. So like being on stage, quite often, like, people in the room are focused on you. They're not speaking, and you have that chance to set the tone. So for me, it's really important to go up and feel grounded when I'm on stage, and to kind of feel, what I love to do is feel my feet on the floor, kind of really focus on my feet and my toes, and just kind of on my breathing and getting that breathing into my belly. So it's kind of slower and really calm, grounded breathing. And that really, really works for me. And then as I'm doing my delivery, I like to make sure that I'm conscious of where I'm looking. Of course, eye contact is something that is difficult for a lot of autistic people, and it's something we really have in our heads. In a room full of people who are all in an audience and you're on a stage, you don't actually have to make full eye contact with those people. You have to appear to be making eye contact with those people. So, and you don't want to fixate on one person for the whole thing. So you get this opportunity to kind of look at lots of people in the room, and it can appear that you're making eye contact, even if you feel uncomfortable doing that. If you do feel comfortable making eye contact, then that can also, what I find when that happens is people do actually give you a little encouragement. They want you to do a good job. So that's actually a really helpful thing to remember. Like, they're there to learn something from you, and they want you to do the best job that you can around doing that. So that sort of helps me to remember that too. Other delivery tips. I actually don't love to prescribe very specific things about like where you should look, where you should hold your hands, anything like that, because I really don't think it's helpful to do that. Because actually, specifically for, thinking about things like stimming, that if I just say to you, like, you've got to stand, like, make sure you don't do anything annoying with your hands. Like, that's not helpful, is it? Don't do anything distracting with your hands, which is the kind of tips that people will probably give you. I feel like that only gets you in your head and makes it worse. I feel like actually what you really want to be focusing on is your objectives and your storytelling, and really enjoy telling your story. And guess what? Then your hands might do some things, and that's okay, but people are going to get captivated by the storytelling. I've seen amazing storytellers on stage who are actually stimming, so it's not in itself something that means that you're not going to be able to tell a good story. And I think the more we worry about that kind of thing, the worse it can get. When I was doing one of the panels I did last week, it didn't go to plan. They'd said beforehand, I'm going to ask all four of you this first question. So for me, I had it in my head, I had that planned, that first question, how I was going to answer it, and then I was also answering a question later on, and I knew how those two were going to link together. And the moderator skipped over me on the first question, and so I didn't get to answer it. That really threw me, and I noticed myself like doing this, and that was okay. I think that's the time just to notice, like, okay, maybe I'm feeling a bit anxious right now. Can I use my breath to help ground me? Can I feel my feet on the floor? Can I, maybe just feel those fingertips touching one another and have a bit of a mindfulness moment, because that can be really helpful on stage as well. And I think sometimes we're afraid of doing those kinds of things because we think that we can a lot of people rush a lot on stage and don't feel like you can take a moment, take a breath, and actually that can be very powerful when you're talking to a room full of people, to take a pause and then to move on from there. It's actually a major power play, a major control moment if you can do things like that on stage. And so that does take maybe quite a lot of practice, which is something we'll talk about in a moment. So that step 4 is all about the delivery of your content. Make sure that you have a call to action at the end. That's in the content. Make sure that people know how to get in touch with you. For me, one of the whole points of doing a talk is so that people can come to me instead of me having to go out there and find lots of people. So number 5 is the aftermath of the event. We've got to recognize that doing things like this probably take up a hell of a lot of energy. Oh my gosh. With all, like I said, often there's traveling, often there's all the energy of being around a lot of people, of being out of your normal routine, of the nerves that will be there. And I mean, we should say, I'm not trying to totally get rid of anxiety when you talk, because it is quite normal to have that kind of slight anxiety around doing it. It's just you want to turn that into kind of excited nerves, I guess, give you some energy around it, rather than something that's going to really get in the way. So the aftermath, that's all about trying to plot out what happens next. Make sure that you can find some rest time quite soon afterwards. So whether that's kind of small moments of rest time, or if you can take the whole next day off. I actually ended up in a situation, I was so overstimulated after giving this presentation last week that I came home, I fell asleep almost straight away. I'd had to travel to London and back, so it was about 6 hours of traveling, maybe more. And then I came home, ate something, and just fell asleep very, very quickly. And then I woke up, so it's everything was still there, that overstimulation was still there, but I woke up at 2:30 and I could not go back to sleep. And the next day I just had to give myself some grace and be like, you're just completely exhausted now, you've been awake since 2:30 in the morning, this is not a big productive day for you. Now, probably if I'd have been in that scenario and I'd have been in employment and been expected to go to work the next day, I think what I would have done is to ask to work from home that day, if that was possible. Maybe take the day off if you know you're doing a big talk, and then you need to probably have a rest day after that. So thinking about that aftermath and the impact doing a talk might have on you, I think is really, really important to plan for that as much as you can. And then we've also got to think about follow-up. So I spoke about having a call to action at the end of your talk so people know how to find you. You then need to plan in how you're going to do the follow-up. So ideally, people will actually come to you. Many people might start following you on social channels, on LinkedIn, and you will make connections. You'll also make connections with the organisers, and they might give you future opportunities to speak too. So it's really important to plan in the follow-up to any talk. That might be about emailing the organisers, it might be about emailing people who have reached out to you, and it may be, and what can often be quite helpful, is that you plan your follow-up before you actually do the talk. So Maybe you've prepped some emails you're going to send out. Maybe there's like you've got some kind of materials you're sending out with things. And so doing that prep beforehand is often better, because like I said, if you're in the aftermath and your energy has been very drained by these days. So those are all the steps that I give myself when I'm doing a talk. I hope that's helpful for you. I should say that giving presentations, public speaking, is something that gets a lot easier with practice. The more you do it, the more natural it feels, and actually the less energy draining it feels, because the less anxiety you have around it. And the more you can create these structures and these routines to go through every time you do a talk, then the more natural that becomes, and you can habit form. And so then it's much less onerous, and perhaps can even become something really enjoyable if it's something that you spend a lot of time doing. So like in my situation, the more I do it, the more I enjoy it. I hope that's been helpful. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe. I'd love to hear more about your experiences with public speaking. And if you've got any further questions, I can make lots more videos, because this is an area of interest for me and an area of expertise. If you're interested in this, you might be interested in some of my other videos too. So head over and have a look. I look forward to hearing from you. Bye.